Hi, hello. So in this video, I want to talk about all the Sumeru characters that have been released, or all the characters since 3.0, since 3.8 update has no new characters, and it's pretty clear that Fontaine is coming right afterwards. And so I thought, why not just make a video about all the Sumeru characters and give my thoughts, and maybe even my feelings. This isn't really a scripted video like usual, so I'm just gonna give my own honest opinion on what I think about the Sumeru characters, since I built, reviewed, and used them in many team comps, including meta team comps. So yeah, let's just start with the first character. Now in 3.0, we got a total of 3 new characters, which was Collei, Tighnari, and Dendro Traveler. And starting with Collei, she basically got overshadowed by Dendro Traveler in almost every aspect. The 2 biggest things that I did not like about her, like many other players, was the fact that her burst had really weird ICD, so even though it looked like it was dealing a lot of Dendro damage, it wasn't really causing that many reactions, and when it comes to her boomerang skill, it often would miss the enemies, and it was kind of weird to play around it. But the thing is, she actually grew a lot on me, and it's not just because she's a precious person that we need to protect during the storyline, because once she gets a couple of constellations like the second one, and you give her a sacrificial bow, she actually becomes a staple team member for Nilou Bloom teams. It does take a while to perfect her playstyle in this team, but I gotta say, her damage, her Dendro application, and most importantly, her playstyle just feels really fresh for Nilou Bloom. And I really think because of the Dendro Traveler, she got a bad rap, when in reality, she's a pretty good Dendro character, and she's really amazing in Nilou Bloom team. Now, on the other hand, Tighnari is somebody whose playstyle I appreciated immediately. When you look at it, the next serious spread damage dealer is Alhaitham, and Tighnari basically set the standard for spread damage. And by the way, speaking of which, he is on the standard banner, and the amazing thing is that his constellations are super valuable. Like, every single one of them gives him value, and the last one turns him into a disgusting damage dealer. But even at C0, he's a good damage dealer, and more importantly, when it comes to team building, he's actually one of the best units you can use for quick bloom teams. Obviously, things do balance out because on the negative side, you won't be able to use him in Hyper Bloom or Burgeon teams efficiently, and you will need somebody who applies Deepwood set because he doesn't really want to use it himself. However, the fact that you can use him in Quicken or Spread teams as well as Quick Bloom, I think that he's a very solid standard banner character, and I really appreciate the way Hoyoverse designed him, and that's not something I will see often during this video. Now, Dendro Traveler is basically the best version of Traveler we got in the game right now. Like, right until Nahida, he was basically used in every single Dendro team, and in my opinion, he still remains relevant even until this day, despite the fact we have so many new Dendro characters like Yao Yao. There is of course the problem with his burst that the enemies can move out from it, and when it comes to Burgeon, you can play him in Burgeon, but you will need to use a Hydro attack on the flower he produces, because as you know it, if you use Pyro on the flower, it just explodes and you lose all the Dendro application. But yeah, I really like the way he was designed and his power level, and I'm hoping in Fontaine we get something similar. Now, Dori, I think that Hoyoverse at this point just trolled us with this character. Everything about her just feels so wacky. On a first look, you would think that she will apply tons of Electro from her burst. But just like with Collei, it has a weird ICD, not to mention the fact her main source of Electro application comes from the burst, and it's super expensive. You will need tons of ER to fix this problem. I mean, sure, she's a healer, so that's fine, but we also have Cookie, who outperforms her in every single way. The most important one being is that she doesn't rely on her burst, and you can just use her skill to trigger all the reactions. I think I made a video some time ago exploring Dori's potential at C6, and that's where she basically shines a little bit as a damage dealer in aggravate teams, but getting to C6 is just stupid with her, and I really feel like this just plays into her personality because all she wants is more, and in this case, Hoyoverse just wants money from you to make her semi-functional at C6. I don't know, maybe I'm just too negative here. She is a healer, she does have cool normal attacks, and I mean it's Genshin, so just play whatever you want. Now, next one is our favorite TCG enthusiast and punny comedian. Cyno is somebody who I feel like is in either love or hate relationship with players. I personally love his playstyle because all you need to do is just watch out for the eye, press the skill button, and go and repeat. Obviously, there's a lot of cool combos you can learn with him, and there are plenty of teams you can build with him as well. But my biggest gripe with him, just like with the Wanderer, is the lack of resistance to interruption. He also shares a similarity with Xiao, and that's because all of his damage comes from the burst. And in some scenarios, this sucks because if the Abyss Chamber has multiple waves of enemies, usually you will take out the first wave really quickly, but then you need to reapply Dendro, and that means switching out, which also means ending his burst. but still, you can build really strong quick bloom teams with him. And overall, with the right investments and teammates, he becomes super solid, but he's not defining when looking at all the Sumeru characters. Now, Candace is another one who contributed to the roster of lackluster 4-star Sumeru characters. I would say that overall she's extremely niche for what she does. The Hydra Infusion and the elemental damage boost is just too niche, not to mention the fact her burst duration is just so short, and you basically need her C1 to make it usable. However, on the flip side, when playing in Nilou Bloom teams with Yao Yao, she actually becomes really valuable, especially if you have her C6. It's actually something I've discovered just recently, and honestly, her design with the whole shield and spear is really interesting to me, and I'm kinda happy she eventually found her place in at least one of the teams. And speaking of which, Nilou is probably the most defining character of the Sumeru cycle. Taking a Dendro reaction and modifying in a way that it deals a lot of damage really quickly, it's just a really interesting and also rewarding concept that I wish a lot of other characters will do in the future. I know our math lord Jeff, among others, dislikes the fact that you are restricted to building teams from only Hydro and Dendro characters in order to enable Nilou's bountiful blooms, and I can partially agree to this opinion, but personally, I like the fact you're restricted to only 2 elements. Provided that the outcome is rewarding, I don't see that big of a problem. This was definitely annoying and noticeable just when Nilou got released, but now, thanks to so many Dendro characters, and I'm assuming we're gonna see more Hydro characters in Fontaine, I think right now it's totally fine. Like, off the top of my head, I can come up with 8 team variations right now. And besides the specific way you need to build teams, she also vertically scales really high with the damage. Like getting her signature weapon, getting her second constellation, or getting Nahida's second constellation, the AoE damage is just through the roof. And even with some team variations like with Collei, the single target damage output is also really good. So yeah, Nilou definitely an amazing character, kinda had a rough patch during her initial banner, but still, she offers a unique, rewarding, and powerful playstyle. Now, I don't want to spend too much time praising Nahida because obviously she's a game changer, and basically because of her, Nilou teams are definitely more powerful. She does have this syndrome of suffering from success because every single Dendro character gets compared to her, and that's totally fair, but keep in mind we do have to build 2 teams for the Abyss, unless of course you don't really care about it, and I wouldn't blame you because the latest Abyss cycle is just pure pain. However, the point is, she's the type of Dendro character we all asked for and got. Now, Layla is an interesting case because I feel like a lot of people forgot about her because of the Dendro hype. As a shielder, she's solid for me, but as a damage dealer, it's a bit more questionable because unless you're using her in a mono cryo team with Shenhe, or you have her C6 unlocked, for the most part she's just a shielder, and we have plenty of those. However, what's really unique about her is that her shield and her cryo application can be done off-field. And what's funny, as I mentioned, because of the Dendro hype, she is actually pretty decent in Hyperbloom variations, also known as Hyperfridge. Still, what's annoying is that her shield viability heavily depends on the first constellation, and I don't have it. But overall, to me, she's a decent and niche character at the same time. Now, Faruzan, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. She's a bait for Heizo, Xiao, and Wanderer mains. The reason I'm calling her bait is that at C0, she barely functions. Like seriously, her playstyle is even clunkier than Sara's. Getting her second constellation is almost mandatory unless you're playing with Heizo because his rotations are shorter, but she still suffers a lot from her horrible energy issues. And the fourth, and more importantly the sixth constellation, are the ones that fix it. Like right now, she's honestly the most shameless 4-star pay-to-win character. And I don't know what even pay-to-win means in Genshin because it's not really a hard game. I don't know, I'm sorry for the rant, but I feel like Hoyo shouldn't just release characters with the problems and sell the solutions from the constellations. And the thing is, she's actually really fun to use at the 6th constellation, and you definitely feel stronger when using her with Xiao, Wanderer, or Heizo. But I don't know, I just feel really conflicted about her, and she still feels kinda super niche. But going back to characters that actually feel complete, Wanderer is actually super solid with a couple of problems. But the most important thing about him, I think, and something that doesn't really get acknowledged a lot, is that he is extremely good for world quests and exploration because of his flying. And if you compare him to Xiao, he doesn't really rely on his burst for damage output. Although, if you do have his second constellation, then yeah, it also deals a lot of damage as well. But this guy definitely needs shielding because without it, he gets popped like a volleyball constantly. And it's funny because I thought initially because of his flying, enemy attacks won't be able to reach him that easily. However, the opposite happened. Most of the enemy AI becomes really ruthless when he's in air. So if you're like used to the enemy patterns and foreseeing them, him, when you're in air with Wanderer, you don't know what happens next because the AI is just super weird. He also has one of those hyper carry problems where if you don't invest into him or his teammates, then his damage output is not that great. But on the flip side, if you use Benny Boy and Witsith, the damage then becomes great, and if you also have C6 Faruzan, well, things become even better. Still, I think his best selling point is the ability to fly, and he makes world exploration that much enjoyable. Now, Yao Yao is probably one of the most pleasant surprises that have happened in the whole Sumeru cycle. I mean, she is from Liyue, and we know how that logic works, but I really love the fact we got a defining 4-star character that we can pretty much put into any Dendro team. She's got amazing healing from her burst, she has great Dendro application, and most importantly, when she's using the burst, she becomes a total wacko. And yeah, not much needs to be said about her. If you had to choose the first Dendro character you need to start building, then she's definitely the easiest answer. But when it comes to my most favorite character that I enjoy playing the most, it has to be Alhaitham. I know that he is one of the biggest casualties when it comes to Nahida syndrome I mentioned, because if you have her, why do you need him? While his spread damage output is definitely better than Nahida's, she does provide an elemental mastery boost, and she can also be used for off-field Dendro application. Both of them can be Dendro drivers, but only one of them can enchant me with their 6-pack. I mean, I don't know, I just like his playstyle, that's all. And the funny thing is that Nahida is actually a really good teammate for him. And I feel like out of all dedicated damage dealers we got from the Sumeru cycle, it feels like he doesn't come with a condition attached, and he's absolutely fleshed out at C0. However, I cannot say the same about Dehya, because if Dori was the character that Hoyoverse trolled us with, then Dehya was the character that disappointed us. Like, I don't know what happened to her. It's not that her kit is bad, it's just the idiotic damage scalings that Hoyoverse decided to go with. And it also doesn't help the fact if you want to play her as a damage dealer, one of her biggest problems is the good old energy issue, because when she uses her burst, the skill that she deploys disappears, and that's her source of energy. So the only time you stay with her on the field, you're not getting any particles. I get the idea they wanted to create a character with a unique damage mitigation, but even her damage to resistance interruption works in a weird way. Like, it doesn't last that long, and the part where she provides infinite resistance to interruption comes from the passive talent. And it doesn't last that long. And sure, you can use her in Mono Pyro, but it feels almost the same way as using Xinyan here. And you could use her for Melt Ganyu, but at the same time, it's just not as reliable as Zhongli or C4 Yanfei or others. And I know her damage gets fixed when you get more constellations, and she is on the standard banner, but I don't know, it feels like Hoyoverse missed the mark with her, and the funny thing is, I do love using her, and I am secretly hoping that her damage mitigation becomes more relevant for Fontaine. Man, I really wish my tirade stops now, but what happened with Mika as well? This Chocobo boy has so many issues, from being an energy hogger to non-existent damage. And you could argue that Mr. Gacha Gamer, he's a physical damage booster. And to that I say, is he really? You only really get relevant physical damage boost when there's 3 or more enemies. This sort of gets fixed with the constellations, but the biggest chunk of his damage boost only comes from the C6. And sure, he has the attack speed boost, but for someone like Eula, this barely translates to a single normal attack. Because if you didn't know, Claymore users have one of the lowest attack speeds, and so getting this kind of a buff usually doesn't really give that much to them. And the irony here is that just like with Dehya, I actually really enjoy him. I love the fact that he uses his polearm, his crossbow, and his spellbook. I like the chunky one-time heal from his burst, but right now he just doesn't feel fleshed out. Maybe once we get more physical damage dealers or somebody who really cares about attack speed. However, for now, he just remains too niche for me, especially for the fact his damage buff doesn't snapshot with Eula's burst. Yes, Kaveh, the poor man's version of Alhaitham. The thing is, his damage isn't really that great, and while he has a unique way to self-heal from Dendro explosions, the biggest seller here is that he's from the Dendro element. Personally, I just use him as a Dendro driver for Hyperbloom or Burgeon teams, and that's basically it. So I think if you don't have a Dendro driver, or you need a second one, then just slap on him a Favonius Greatsword, and he's super solid. Now, Baizhu and Kaveh, they kinda didn't get a lot of reception because of the content drought from Genshin, and the fact that Honkai Star Rail got released at the same time. I also kinda think that Baizhu got released a little too late and the hype died down. But personally, I love using him and I think he has a lot of value. I didn't think initially he would be great as a Hyperbloom driver, but he is. Even though his single target focus from the burst isn't that great for Burgeon teams, but the fact that he heals quite a lot and provides pseudo shielding, which is basically just providing resistance to interruption, he's a solid character overall. However, there is a tiny problem, and that's Yao Yao. She kinda does almost a lot of things similar to Baizhu. Obviously, there are some teams where Baizhu excels and Yao Yao doesn't, where at least she's not as good as him. And so, if you had to choose between the two, especially if you got Yao Yao for free from the past event, I would say he is an easy skip. But who am I kidding? This knockoff Orochimaru is still a fan favorite for many, and it's fun to use him in Hyper Bloom or Nilou Bloom teams. Finally, we have Kirara, and with so many Dendro characters already released, she still manages to stand out. With the shielding and the Dendro application she causes from the Catbox mode, she does end up working pretty well in Quicken and Nilou Bloom teams. But, you know, because she has to stay in the Catbox mode, she can't really trigger attacks from Xingqiu or Yelan, so if you want to use her in Hyper Bloom teams, you kinda need to have Ayato or Kokomi. But let's be honest, the real reason why you want to use her is the Catbox mode you can use for the world exploration. Honestly, with the amount of undercooked characters we got in the Sumeru cycle, she still feels kinda solid. But at the same time, she's also kinda niche. Although, one thing is clear, she definitely power crept Sayu, just for the simple fact you can use her Catbox mode when climbing. But yeah, that's basically my thoughts about all of the characters from the Sumeru cycle. And this is my sort of a pseudo tier list ranking of the characters, that I also did the same when I made the Inazuma characters video. I mean, when looking at it, Nilou definitely felt defining here, since she enables such a strong and unique team comp, and Nahida is basically the best Dendro character we could have asked for, and she's definitely defining. And in my opinion, Yao Yao also deserves a high praise. It's not something we're used to where we get a really strong, or at least in this case, a really flexible 4-star character. And as for Alhaitham, I'm not really sure if he's defining or just super solid, but out of all dedicated damage dealers from this cycle, he just feels really good and fleshed out. And as for the rest of the characters, they're either super solid, some are niche, and some of them are really niche. Like, honestly, if I compare my feelings from this video to Inazuma's I did, I feel both of the cycles felt satisfying, but I would be leaning towards more Inazuma in this case. I don't know, the characters felt a bit more different, but obviously the saving grace of the Sumeru cycle had to be the Dendro reactions, and they were a huge game changer for the meta and just in general for the gameplay as well. But still, I feel like I had more disappointments with the characters from Sumeru than from Inazuma, but who knows, maybe Horrorverse has a plan where they release some kind of a content that makes those characters better, although I'm not really a huge fan of this. But overall, I liked Sumeru, I liked the characters. You know, it's kind of a weird feeling to see the game going in a different region again. The game is almost 3 years old, and it feels like only a couple of days have passed. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry if I ranted too much here, but you know, I like Genshin, I like talking about it, but most important of all, I feel really thankful that you guys keep supporting my channel, and that makes me really happy, and I'll continue making more videos. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.